In the last 7 days, South Syria has become the talk of the world. Druze minorities and Bedouins clashed in the south. But here's what the media won't tell you. If you care about Israel at all, stick around. Israel armed and egged on the Druze in Syria as a tool to propagate instability. Instability in Syria is exactly what Israel wants. I'll explain why later. Now, there have been reports initially of Druze militia attacking civilians of the Bedouin tribes, and some civilians even losing their lives as a result. The Bedouins naturally rallied to oppose the Druze. They even called up fellow Bedouin tribes all across Syria to say, come down to Sweida. Hopefully, I have a map somewhere of where all this is. Sweida is a governorate in the south. Think of it like a province in the south of Syria. And just southwest of all of the Syrian country is the Israeli state. Now, Israel has essentially chosen their champion of chaos in South Syria. Druze, I choose you. And then it goes. I don't know what kind of creature comes out, but it's a Pokemon reference. Now, the Druze, it will be to sow discord and keep as much of Syria as possible untamable or unmanageable. And any backlash against the Israel armed and encouraged to fight Druze, any backlash against the Druze, any quelling of rebellious tendencies, any government action against the outlawed militia, because in a country that's trying to stabilize, you don't just have random militia running around with foreign weapons. That's obviously something to quash, right? But any response to their destabilizing actions backed by Israel, and Israel can use that and to justify airstrikes, to justify even potentially invading themselves into Syrian territory. Look at my comment section in previous videos talking about Syria, or look at the comment section of big news outlets even, and you will see loads of comments like, Israel are just protecting the Druze. The Druze are at risk of the Syrian government who are gonna, potentially slaughter them en masse. Da, 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 da. The Druze will never be harmed. Go Israel. Viva la Israel. I don't think they say Viva la Israel, but you get the point. Israel will make sure this and that, and the Druze are safe. Yeah, suddenly they care about a minority. Of course, I buy that completely. This is Israel's wedge, ladies and gentlemen, because a stable and prosperous Syria, 80% Sunni Muslim Arabs, about 10% Shia Muslim Arabs, and a sort of hodgepodge mix of the rest. This is not a nation that's likely to benefit Israel in the long run if it stabilizes, gets together, and then prospers. Sitting on Israel's northern border, Israel has been occupying the Golan Heights for like 58 years. This is not a Syria they want to see prosper. So Israeli geopolitics dictates they keep the country destabilized. And a perfect wedge to shove into the wound so the wound can never heal has been chosen, the Druze. Now, the last 48 hours specifically, South Syria looks to be calming down. What's going on? Let's discuss. The United States claims to have brokered a deal to stop Israel from carrying out further attacks. Not gonna lie, I don't know what the terms of that deal are, but hear me out on what I do know. The Bedouins won't get their revenge, for better or worse, largely better, because even though I hear children have lost their lives because of the Druze attacks on Bedouin communities, even children, women, even then, largely better that they don't get their revenge, because although the Druze who committed those crimes against the locals may not face justice now under a disengagement and ceasefire still serves the bigger purpose here. Syria can try to stabilize, and its government, the new Syrian government, can try to keep peace within its borders. Not an easy task if you have Israel as a flipping neighbor. Now, the Bedouins have been ordered to leave entirely Sweida governorate or province in order to keep the peace. The Druze will maintain the governorate control, right? That the district basically. They'll retain their militia to control it. Now, the militia does acknowledge that the government in Syria, the new Syrian government, is the government. They acknowledge it, but there's fractures, there's tensions. Now that's the news. Here's the analysis. This is not a direct win for the new Syrian government. Far from it. It might even be a strategic defeat. It's likely to cause problems down the line, but peace now is at least something. And the challenge is pushed down the road for the future, because there wasn't really an option now to do anything more without risking chaos and further instability. That's not a gambit the Ahmed al-Shara led government was willing to go down, that road. You see, what's been agreed is essentially government forces will back out of Sweida, leaving the city and the region in control of the Druze, a minority that acknowledges the new Syrian government, but there's fragments of the Druze that do not, and those fragments are the fragments that Israel's arming. They have other plans, potentially a desire for autonomy or their own little state. And of course, Israel will egg them on to that end, because chaos in Syria is good news for Israel. So Israel arms them, potentially will even support them with the Israeli military might, come what may, or if required, something the Syrian state absolutely cannot match. If the Druze insurgents militia, armed and backed by the Israeli state and their air force and their military, ever try to do any stupid antics in South Syria to destabilize, what's Syria going to do? They really can't. So in essence, Israel has indirect control now of South Syria, all of Sweida province. They also have majority control over Quneitra province, also in the south. Then there's just one more province this far south, Daraa. They don't have full control of Daraa, the Israelis or their allies, as far as I know, but wedged between two provinces that Israel has direct control over, not looking good. Keeping indirect control here in the south of Syria is very powerful for Israel, because one province further in from these, one province further north from these three provinces, Quneitra, Daraa, and Sweida, is Rifq Dimashq, which is the capital province of the whole country, right? Damascus is in Rifq Dimashq. Now, Israeli control, direct or through Druze proxies, for example, is akin to is similar, is comparable to Israel having a knife to Syria's throat, ready to cut at a moment's notice if needed, if deemed necessary by the Israeli state. It's a very, very tough situation for Syria to be in, no question about it. And the question is now, where can Syria go from here? Right? Can they resist further Israeli pressure? Because with that knife to your throat, you can't really do much except by the permission of Israel. And if that's how it works, then Syria is not going to be able to prosper. Israel will make sure they cannot. Can they rely on Turkey, or will Turkey not be willing to step in if Israel wants to go beyond the south of Syria, or if Israel wants to make sure Syria doesn't continue on its unification and prosperity ambitions, right? Can Syria wait for Iran potentially? While not directly aligned, Syria and Iran, they both share a common enemy, a common belligerent, meaning aggressive adversary, Israel, obviously. And if things do pop off with Iran again for round two, as I predict, what will Syria do, if anything? Will they use that chance to try and shore up the control within the Druze community? Will they be able to convince the Druze that, look, you're just being taken for a ride. Do you want to be the pointy end of the Israeli stick? Is that what your community is for? To stab other Palestinians? You're Palestinian yourself, essentially. Are you sure you want to choose that? And the fitna of, getting military support from a real regional power might keep the Druze, taking the bait, essentially, and keeping the Druze on the, Israeli side, making the Druze an Israeli proxy, and they can't help but take the offer. But if things kick off with Iran and Israel loses its strategic advantage, loses its excess military capacity that it can allocate or assist the Druze with, then Syria might be able to make a dive and reshore their southern front. What will other groups and states in the region do? That's another question. So we talked about Iran, we talked about Turkey, but there's Yemen, there's Lebanon, there's Jordan. God save us if you have to rely on Jordan is the end. Because King Abdullah, British accented, British educated King Abdullah is likely to do nothing other than shoot down missiles headed towards Israel. That's the sum total of the Jordanian contribution. Sorry, I'm hating. I'm not actually hating, but offhanded comment really. There's Jordan's in a very difficult position. I've made a video on Jordan's geopolitics. It's not easy. It's not easy being in a situation Jordan is in. There's no strategic defense. Your neighbor is this huge militaristic, violent ethno state. It's not easy to not get steamrolled. So you kind of have to play it in a sort of pliant, compliant, submissive way. Anyway, time will tell how things turn out for the whole region. But for now, one thing is clear. Sacrifices have been made by the Syrian state, which for now keeps the peace and tries to keep the nation moving towards stability. But make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, New Syria has given ground this last week. They've had to take one step back, which means Israel has taken one step forward, for better or worse. For the unbiased news and analysis without the Western spin, I'm Mahfouz, and I'll see you on the next one.